This is a Pinus thunbergii in a container that I began for a presentation to the Washington County Master Gardeners here in Portland, Oregon. You can see that I had started a little bit on the top, but we moved on to different topics and different subjects. We talked about the general design of this tree, as well as removing things like older needles. You can see those yellowish, longer needles. There's some pretty thick branches. It's been a few years since this tree was thinned in the winter or fall season. We're going to look at parallel branches and things that may be removed, as well as just a general cleanup. You can see where I did some previous cuts during the presentation, and then here's all of the new growth and older needles. You can tell where some branches were removed a few years ago. Some of these lower branches, well, we'll discuss whether we remove those or not. I usually start at the top because then as you remove needles and cut branches, things just fall to the lower branches and get stuck, and you can clean those out as they go. I like to get reacquainted with a tree that I haven't worked on, so usually I start off pretty slow, kind of reviewing my options, trying to remember what I decided the first time. You see that bushy far off branch to the left of your screen. We decided that was going to be the new direction, a new leader. One of the benefits of having a container tree that you can experiment on and prune is that you can try new things in new directions. I'm pruning this a little bit in really late winter, early spring, so it's helpful to hold the tip of the branch as you're pulling needles. Sometimes it might tear or even pull off new buds at this time of year. I'm mainly using my small scissor pruners since this is very detailed and refined work and my cuts are not that large. I'm showing you a few different speeds. I paused here because I've finally gotten a little bit of a rhythm, so I think I've figured out the direction I want to go with the tree, and now some of it is just assessing each branch, each location, and each new growth with the idea of pruning out the whorls, the new whorls, to 2 buds or 2 branches. That will help develop the ramification of each branch going forward. I generally move back and forth between pruning and plucking needles. Sometimes it just depends what's catching my eye as I move down the branch. Getting to a section, you can tell I lifted that branch down, where I found a parallel branches that I'm looking at to see if I can simplify this area. Sometimes it's nice to step back and take another look, and I'm going to show you what I'm looking at and why I want to make a decision. So here are the two parallel branches I'm looking at. On the right-hand side, the smaller lower one and the larger upper one, all coming off at a great exterior bend in the tree. This lower one, while it has ramification, the upper one has more options. It even splits earlier on the branch. So I've decided to take that lower branch, and it will relieve some congestion, simplify this area, as well as provide more light for that lower branch that my hand is on. And I'll go back and do that. Speaking of parallel branches, there are possibly some others on this tree. As a young tree, you can look down, you see this lower one on the bottom right, which is under the main trunk. And for a young tree in a container, it's not vital to remove all of these lower branches, but as the tree matures and the trunk matures, those wounds will just get larger and larger. So at some point, it's nice to make a decision if you want to keep it or remove it. So here it goes. You won't really see much from this angle, but you can see there was a lot of foliage on that branch. Now I can continue to refine that upper branch that I kept. It's a little easier to see what's going on with that lower branch removed. It's amazing that you can think you've removed all of the old needles, and every time you look back at an area that's been worked, there's always more. So even though I try to remain focused on the branch I'm working on, it's okay to move back and forth and move around the tree. Often that prevents over pruning in certain areas. If you can move on, come back, move on, return, it becomes a nice rhythm. These bottom branches have a lot more ramification. The older ones often develop their maturity quicker. They're not as vigorous as the top, so they tend to be finer and already have a more developed ramification in the branch structure. In a way, this makes it easier and faster to prune in these areas because there's not as many decisions to make, and the tree communicates really well how it's growing and what can be removed and what can remain. Because this tree has been developed in a container, this bottom branch coming off to the left could end up being a little low in the landscape, but overall it depends on how tall I let the entire tree get. Even in the landscape, it could remain proportional to the trunk where that lower branch comes off. branches on this side of the tree, this right-hand side of the tree, are definitely not as vigorous and not as developed. So I'm trying to decide what ends to leave long so it has more vigor and that I'm not disrupting its growth habit as much as I am on the left side, and especially the top. So you'll see some of these ends I'm leaving longer and not necessarily pruning back to 2 branchlets. I might let them extend and hopefully have a little more vigor to catch up with those stronger branches on the left-hand side. If I really wanted to strengthen that right-hand side, I could leave all of the older needles and not remove them, therefore giving more photosynthesis and energy to those branches. This type of detailed work is really appropriate for very focal point trees or trees that you will see really close up, either by walking past them or as part of a detailed garden scene. If the tree is in the background or of a larger scale, this level of detail might not be necessary every year. Removing needles could be more of an energy balance technique instead of aesthetic. But you can see already that upper left-hand side where the longer, older needles have been removed compared to that bottom right-hand branch. It does look a little shaggy because those old needles are relaxing and loosening up and they don't have that upward growth. So it is a really easy way to tidy up a plant, even if you don't do any pruning at all. So even though I talked about removing this lower branch, sometimes it's nice to just go through the process of taking the needles, thinning, developing it, just like you would the top. Because sometimes there might be branches that you think should be removed, but really they're not what they seem once they're cleaned up. So as an exercise, and especially as part of a demonstration, it is nice to just go through the process. You can tell it actually really didn't take that much work to clean it out. It's a pretty small branch. On this lowest branch, the new growth is pretty refined. As a weaker portion of the tree, it won't be as vigorous, and so it's mainly pulling old needles, seeing if there's places that I can simplify, but really I do want to keep it rather strong and not thin it as much as I would the top in order to manage its resource allocations. And it's starting to look pretty complete. Most of the needles, there's always more. I see a few. I'm sure you can pick those out too. You can see that new leader at the very top. We'll take a 360 view right now. It looks pretty well proportioned. As I move around, we'll see that it's actually a fairly narrow tree, even though from that front view it's pretty wide. If I were to locate it in the landscape, I would pick that front as my primary viewpoint. It seems to be the most interesting, shows the most movement of branches. You can see the work is fairly uniform. I treated pretty much every branch the same. That one lower branch that I removed, the cut stands out, but it will start to bark over, much like that intersection where I had to remove a bunch of little branches in the whorl when it was young. It's nice to see an overview of the development of these lower branches. When it gets older, it can be simplified even more, but at this point it's at a good spot to have enough green and growth to maintain and keep growing. The left, those bushy needles that I kept really full, I really want to give that a lot of extra oomph in the spring. Okay, I am going to remove that lower branch. It's time to give it a go. It's right under that trunk. Should really open up that space and accentuate the line of the trunk. And there it is. I might have to clean up that cut a little bit. When I removed that lower portion, the upper left all of a sudden had more visual mass. It's much fuller, and it makes me want to reduce it even more and simplify it even more. So I'm going to start with just some tipping back before I take a larger cut, but eventually that's what I'll do. I know I want to continue the horizontal growth of that branch, so if there's a way for me to accentuate that and select some hierarchy, that's what I'm going for. There, I think that balances it. This concludes my winter and fall work on this Pinus thunbergii, the Japanese black pine. It put out a lot of new growth this summer, and it did not need to be decandled because I really thinned so much growth in the fall and winter. So it'll be ready for another thinning this fall, which is coming up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching.